Good morning, this is Shelley Bledsoe, and this is the presentation for the discussion item on core financial statements for Nurse 5054. Outcomes. By the end of this presentation, the viewer will be able to identify and differentiate the core financial statements of an organization. These core financial statements are the balance sheet, the statement of operations, the statement of change in net assets, and the statement of cash flows. We will also discuss the utilization of each statement, including the different types of information they provide and the reasons for use. The importance of financial statements. Financial tools are essential to the health and wellness of an organization. The role of nurse leaders have evolved over time and now requires a knowledge of business and financial skills. Nurse leaders often control the largest part of a hospital's labor budget, as well as sometimes the overall budget itself. So it's important for them to have this understanding. Due to limited resources and a competitive marketplace, organizations must use all resources wisely and efficiently. And finally, managing departmental budgets can make the difference in the organization's financial stability or its financial turmoil. The balance sheet is a report that indicates the financial position of the organization at a specific point in time. The balance sheet is also known as the Statement of Financial Position. It is the most essential financial report of the organization, and it shows the organization what it owns and what it owes at any specific time. The total assets must be equal to the total liabilities plus the owner's equity. The balance sheet allows stakeholders and decision makers to evaluate an organization's current state and strategize change based on organizational needs. The balance sheet helps leaders to determine if an organization is in a position to expand or if they need to cut cost. Nurse leaders can use balance sheets to identify trends in receivables and payables. And using this document allows the nurse leader to know the liquidity of assets and how quickly they can be converted to cash to pay liabilities. Moving on to the Statement of Operations. The Statement of Operations presents the financial results of the organization's revenues and expense activities for a specific period of time. The Statement of Operations is also known as an income statement. It compares revenues, which is money earned for services provided, to expenses, which is the cost of providing those services. Revenues less expenses shows the organization's profit and loss. Profit versus non-profit. This is a distinction that is important due to tax exemptions. The term not-for-profit implies an organization does not make profits from services provided. However, that is actually an inaccurate definition or description. Not-for-profit simply means profits are not the primary goal of the organization. So how do nurse leaders utilize statements of operations? The nurse leader can use this statement to determine the profits earned that can help pay for new technologies. It is also used when considering expansion of services and the amount of profit available for reinvestment. It is used to consider the cost of replacing buildings or equipment that is dated and actually considers inflation and the higher cost of replacing these items. It also allows leaders to know the safety margin for unexpected emergencies that may arise. The third core financial statement is called the Statement of Change in Net Assets. This statement summarizes items that affect the organization's unrestricted, temporarily restricted, and permanently restricted net assets. The Statement of Change in Net Assets. It helps reconcile the organization's net assets from one year to the next. It shows changes within each class of net assets, and temporary and permanent restricted assets are allocated for specific purposes only. An example of a permanently restricted asset might be monies received to go specifically to build a certain children's wing within a hospital. You could not use those funds elsewhere. So nurse leaders can use the statement of change in net assets to know when cash is received or paid. This is crucial for paying liabilities. So an example is liabilities are still due despite perhaps slow collections. Nurse leaders can also use this information to know if they have cash on hand to purchase capital equipment or undertake projects. Because this document tells where the cash comes from and where it goes, it can be used to determine where change efforts need to be, such as increased collection efforts or reduction in inventory or supply orders. Finally, the last financial statement in the core group of financial statements is the statement of cash flow. The statement of cash flows shows where the organization's cash came from and how it is used over a specific period. Something I found interesting about the statement of cash flows is that where the balance sheet tells how much cash the organization has at the end of each accounting period, the statement of cash flows tells where the cash comes from and how the cash is being used. This provides an idea of what the organization can afford to undertake. It's important to understand revenue versus cash flow. So revenue is the amount of money the organization has received or is entitled to receive in exchange for services provided. Revenue does not show cash on hand. Cash on hand, or cash in general, is the money on hand available for an organization to pay its liabilities. So nurse leaders utilize the statement of cash flows in several different ways. The nurse leader can use this document to determine the cash on hand for paying liabilities, as stated earlier. Healthcare executives also use this to determine the liquidity of assets for purchasing items, expansion, or even building. An example would be that there is a new technology that the hospital would like to purchase, and the cash on hand tells them if they can afford to proceed. This statement provides information of cash flows from operating activities, investing activities, financing activities, and the net increase or decrease in cash overall. In conclusion, nurse managers and executives must be able to understand and communicate with the organization's financial managers. Financial statements allow nurse executives to understand the importance of looking beyond the department and focusing on what is financially best for the organization as a whole. Understanding these financial implications helps engage nurse leaders at all levels to stay within or under their operating budgets. Nurse leaders need to understand how patient outcomes affect the organization's bottom line, and continuous analysis uncovers new understandings of an organization's financial situation. Here are the references used to complete this presentation, and I thank you for listening. Have a great day.